Our next panel is The Land That Owns Itself, and our panel host is Jennifer Menke. Jennifer is the founder of Regenerative Earth and co-founder of Sacred Contract and the Land That Owns Itself program. She has worked globally to preserve ecosystems and uphold nature's sovereignty. Our panel, Land That Owns Itself, will explore groundbreaking legal pathways for land to own itself, granting nature rights and reshaping how humans relate to the living world. Please welcome the Land That Owns Itself panel and Jennifer Menke.
Thank you so much, Kim. Well, it's wonderful to be here with everyone today and with this group of panelists up here. I think I first just want to acknowledge the rain that came down because it was so powerful, and I feel like so much of what we're doing is about giving nature voice. So I feel it was really beautiful that we actually had to stop and not talk and just let the rain be. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And the valley is going through a drought, so to me that was a real blessing that that came down. Before introducing our panelists, I just want to provide some context about the work that we're doing, as it'll help you understand how these four individuals are part of this work. So for the Land That Owns Itself, it's and Sacred Contract. It's a coalition of organizations that came together to, really look at how do we give nature and land sovereignty. How do we create a legal pathway for land to own itself and change the cultural belief system of humans owning land and being able to, and commodifying land, buying and selling land, and basically doing, what humans desire with that land. So this work is about, changing on a legal level, the ability for nature to have rights, and to protect that in perpetuity. And, just how that works is that there's a legal entity that has the ecosystems of a land that in essence are like the board that represent that legal entity. And the title is then transferred to it. So the land then is literally holding its own title. And there are human guardians that, speak on behalf of the land, but they are legally bound to do what's in the best interest of the land. And then we also have conservation easements that have rights of nature language woven into it that provides just an added layer of protection for lands. And this isn't about removing humans from nature. This is about acknowledging humans as being nature as well, and just rethinking how do we be in right relationship? What does that mean to respect the sovereign standing of a tree, for instance, or the sovereign standing of water, and acknowledge that it has the right to be healthy and prosper in perpetuity. And how do we engage in that relationship so that all species of this planet are able to have a healthy and vital future? So to introduce our panelists, I'm going to start with Thomas and kind of work my way back here. Thomas Hall is an attorney who has been our local legal counsel. And I'll just say that a couple months ago, the first mountain to own itself in the U.S. Happened here in the Valley. And so it's a really big deal. It's pretty monumental. And Thomas was a big part of this, on the legal side, really helping to make this happen. And he's been doing conservation work in Colorado for a long time. And then Delubina Romero is one of the guardians for Pyramid Mountain, the mountain that's not sovereign. And she is a spiritual indigenous elder with ancestral relations to this valley. Angela Montoya is also a guardian for Pyramid Mountain, and she's an indigenous person who lives in Antonito and has also ancestral relations to this valley. Has done a lot of work with community and the history of Colorado in this region. And then Juniper Pearson Good, he's someone who lives here in Creston, Colorado. He's also a guardian for Pyramid Mountain and has a really deep heart connection to this land. And there are two other guardians that are not able to be here with us today, but our intention is just, I'm going to give them some questions, and then we'd love to hear questions from the audience, because we really want to hear kind of what's in the heart of the community and what you all are thinking. So this first question is for Thomas. And so, Thomas, how does this legal framework protect the rights of nature in your perspective?
Thanks, Jennifer. How many of you own land? Yeah, quite a few, okay? So as landowners, what you actually owned is not the land. What you own are a bundle of rights given to you under law, okay? So you have the right to build on the land, or sell the land, or bequeath the land to your heirs if you pass away by your will. Those are the rights that are legally defined, and those rights are enforceable. If someone trespasses across your land, you can stop them. You could even perhaps sue them for monetary damages if they damage the land. So as landowners, that's what you have, and you're given those rights because you are humans. You are people, you're persons under the law. So you have what's called in the law standing. You can bring suit to enforce your rights, okay? So when we talk about the rights of nature, what we're talking about is a system under the existing legal framework in which ecosystems have similar rights to people. They're recognized as persons. So forest ecosystems, the atmosphere, the plants, the animals, all of these ecosystems are given rights. Now, you might say, this is new to Western law, and it is true, but it wasn't very long ago that women didn't have rights, and children didn't have rights, and enslaved people didn't have rights. But those rights were gradually extended to those groups. They were given standing under the law to enforce those rights. So you could think of this as just a further extension of rights in land that is being extended to the ecosystems. So let me give you a concrete example. In Ecuador in 2008, they amended their constitution, and they created, under that new constitution, rights for the ecosystems, so the rivers and the forests. Well, subsequently, a mining company wanted to create a big mine in this river watershed. And the local people said, well, if you do that, you're going to dump your tailings into the river and pollute the river. And the river has a right to thrive, to flourish, to run clean and clear. You're violating the rights of this river. And this case worked its way all the way through to the Ecuadorian Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court held in favor of the river. So that meant either the mining company could not mine, or they had to mine in such a way that they had to pay attention to and not violate the right of the river to flow cleanly. So that's a modern example. Now, we're never going to amend the American Constitution anytime soon. I think you'll all agree to that. So what we did here is we created a couple things. I'm going to start with the conservation easement. So you may not be familiar with those, but basically it's a way to protect property. Landowners can grant a conservation easement to a land trust. They can give that land trust the development rights, let's say, so that they no longer have, the landowner has no longer the right to develop the land. That's how a conservation easement works. Well, there is a conservation easement on Pyramid Mountain, and amongst the different rights that are enumerated in this conservation easement are the rights of the 5 ecosystems, the water ecosystem, for example. So those rights are now part of a legal document that applies to the land and run with the land. So if someone who owned that property violated those rights, those rights could be enforced against that violator. So that's one level of protection for how these rights of the ecosystems are protected with the conservation easement. And the other is what Jennifer mentioned before. An entity was created. Think of it like a property owners association, like the Baca Townhouse Association, okay? Well, who are the members? It's the people that own townhomes. In this association, it's the ecosystems who are the members. And because those ecosystems don't speak English, then just like a child needs a guardian to defend its rights in a court of law, the ecosystems need guardians to defend its rights. And that's where the concept of guardians came in. That's how this thing works. There are people who step into those roles on behalf of each of these ecosystem elements to enforce those rights and to care for the land, taking into consideration I guess you could say, I'll use this phrase, the wishes of the land. Now, how do we know what the wishes of the land are? Well, that's something that Western culture is not very good at. Indigenous people had a much better relationship with the land. And what we're talking about here is extending a concept of relationship under the law to the land. So that it's not just an object, it's not just a property, it's not just a commodity, it's a relationship. It's a brother, it's a sister. It has personhood, and that personhood has to be respected under the law.
Thank you, Thomas. So this next question is for Angela. And so Angela, how do you see this framework changing the way humans relate to nature?
I believe that the most important thing about it is humans understanding and developing a relationship with the land, a relationship with nature. And that comes with a lot of respect, a lot of understanding and communications with the land. Most importantly, praying with the land and being one with the land. And as we move forward in the protection of this land, with the ecosystems, that's the most important thing we have to look at, is protecting, understanding, communicating, and loving. That answer your question?
Yeah, to be in communication or communing, I'm going to refer to Abraham Hicks, but she says, do you spend 20 minutes in nature? And I thought I did, and I looked around and I wasn't. And we get so monster oriented that we don't stop to be with the land, to really, really be with the land and listen. And I'm seeing Brad over there, and we got to go to John's property, and before we ever entered into that land, we spent 30, 40 minutes preparing, because that land was so sacred. I had such a transforming experience from that, not been the same, because it speaks so loudly if we just listen. And I had a dream the other day. I have an affinity for bees, and a bee visited me in Colombia, and it was a very spiritual experience. But then I had a dream. I saw the dandelion when it's ready to blow away. And in the dream, I was in the light of the dandelion, and there was a bee there. And I was looking at the bee, wondering, is it real or not? For some reason, in dreams you don't know, I took a Bic lighter and I put it next to the bee. And it rolled out on the ground, but it was alive and well. So I looked up, why would I do that? So controlled fire is like an initiation. A fire out of control is destruction and purification. So there's so many things we don't know, But Native people did know. And they knew if you saw a fox or skunks and you smelled the skunk smell, would it indicate a hard winter? There were so many ways that we could tell what was coming with the seasons that we've lost connection with. So those were the ways that were, and it doesn't mean we can't get those ways back. And I think a lot of you probably have some really beautiful experiences with nature and do know what we're talking about.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So yeah, like Delabina is expressing, you know, what the animals are communicating, what the trees and our environment pretty much is just as we're sitting here amongst each other, there's different layers to how we might connect with one another. Maybe there's less, you know, eye connection or feelings of intimacy as far as conversation or how we're gonna commune. But for me, speaking is like, to people is very similar to nature. There's this buffer and there's an in-between thing, and you have to navigate how you're gonna communicate and how you're gonna express yourself, and then what's gonna come at you. And I think, as Delabina's talking about, we're witnessing the clouds. The rain just came, and of course there was predictions for that, and many things in nature are just happening. It's just a beautiful expression, and it's really nice to remember that the golden mean ratio is just happening on this earth, and it's such a beautiful place to have the opportunity to live, and to be a guardian is really interesting. You know, it's to build a relationship, a kinship with something that the Western world has said is scary and pushed us away, and we built houses, and we live in a much different experience. And so when we get out of those spaces and we start allowing our body to rest, our mind to rest, we start hearing the sounds of nature more, we start adapting to our surroundings. And me personally, when I go into the nature, I like to start speaking out loud sometimes. And it's strange when it happens because you're not going to speak intentionally, but it just happens, kind of like a good mantra or something you really enjoy that just dawns on you, right? And so that experience in nature is very pleasing because we're foreigners in some sense to these mountains. But when I just stayed on the mountain, I witnessed that there were so many people in Crestone that all the wildlife had sorted out and kind of moved around. And there was less four-legged species. There was only, you know, bird visitors and ants and mice and little creatures. So Crestone is a place that holds a lot of wildlife and beautiful, you know, powerful nature energies here, and that's why we live here, and that's why we speak to the woods, and we want to spend time. We need to get out of our houses in some sense to really build that relationship. So it's just like how I feel speaking to you all now, is I'm new to it, and I need to continue to adapt and learn how to communicate. That's always been my thing in life, is how to communicate what the voices of nature are speaking to me. And that's really fun. So that's just going off of Delabina.
Thank you. Yeah. Good clap. So this next question is for Delubina, and I think you spoke to this already a little bit about, you know, Indigenous culture's view, you know, of their relationship to nature. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea of ownership of nature is something that was seeded at one point in culture, and prior to that, there was a different type of view and relationship to all other species. And I just wanted to see if you could speak to this a little bit.
How many of you have offered tobacco to the land? A lot of you. Awesome. So just honoring the land, right, by offering tobacco. So reciprocity, such that there's a give and a take. And my mother taught me that when you come to the river or lake or something, that if you're not going to get in, at least put water on your mollera, your sipapu up here, because it's a blessing and it'll keep you from getting sick. But I've also taken it to the place where with Reiki we can bless the water and ask permission before we go in and enjoy her. So she's feminine, like the river, the ocean, the earth, the mom, the woman. So that honoring goes way back, because when we were in communion with it, we were weaving together and we were living and being guided for our food. And take the buffalo, for example. Every aspect of the buffalo was used. And I was at a Sundance once where they had a buffalo robe at a teepee, and it was so heavy. And I thought, wow, the women used to lug those things and set them up. So it's such an intricate relationship that we get to have. And how do we do it today and go forward? And so I love what you said, Thomas, about the river having personhood, and that in these places, I think New Zealand and Ecuador, other places are recognizing Colombia too, the sovereign rights of the land and the knowledge and wisdom of the elders that live that way. Up there in the heart of the mountain, they live that way every day. And when we visited them, the little girls were there. It was a birthday celebration for Chiki, the woman that had the nature school, and the children asked us to dance. And I had brought barrettes and things like that, and they did not go with what they were doing because they were so natural. Their hair was long and dark, their clothes was white, and they danced innocently with us. So my assumption that they would even want to wear plastic barrettes was way off. So in that sense, how we can get back to nature, and we use bamboo and cotton and those kinds of things, which was also natural way. And so how we continue to work and weave that back into our beingness and go forward with all the challenges. But it's a wave, and I pray that this wave will continue and that our consciousness changes such that the land becomes more, I don't want to say taken care of, but spoken for in her sovereignty, in her wellness. And when we do this, nature's going to respond to us and maybe not do the destructive things that right now she has to do to get our attention.
And so thank you so much, Elavina. So this last question, before we take questions from the audience, is specifically about Pyramid Mountain and being guardians for Pyramid Mountain. But what are you doing as guardians to protect Pyramid Mountain and ensure that its voice is being heard? And I think we'll start with Juniper here.
So, a very interesting happening, and Thomas really addressed it in my favorite way that I've heard so far, is how the ego relates to what we do. And if I feel I'm going to do something, is that myself? Is that something outside of myself? Is that nature speaking to me? It's the question that comes to me of how to listen to a mountain range or to a river. And after Thomas said that, it really has kind of been the theme of my month in some situations, because it almost applies to everything that we do. In some ways, we feel our intuition is telling us to talk to this person or to go to this place, and we might feel we do this or that at this place. And I think what we're trying to do as guardians is to understand the simplicity of nature and to not elaborate too much as far as what is wanted. However, there is things that are coming up that we're naturally going to have to sort out or listen into. And so it's very beautiful to be in a Buddhist community and to celebrate our Tibetan ancestors and to experience the deep practices that have changed many of our lives here in this community. And it's also beautiful to be recognizing this hill and John's property and a lot of Crestone and this beautiful mountain range as very special and holy places for the Ute territory and many of the tribes of these areas. And so we want to embody a very natural and simplistic center of voice. And for me, it's just trying to reverberate and reflect what is nature sharing with me. So I don't feel I need to do too much. I feel that nature is doing, and it will call me to the stage when it needs me, just like right now I'm just here because I've been asked to be here, and I'm really happy. I'm celebrating what's happening, and I'm very grateful for this time. And the hill has spoken in some words to me that it's a very healing place, and that's what we need to protect and provide, is this outline of Pyramid Mountain being a space for all people of all places, religions, races. All of those things are under the umbrella of nature. We're all birthed and given life from the creation, and all these beautiful creation stories are just fascinating. And so this area has its own creation story, and it's really beautiful. I'd love to learn more, and the more time we spend in these places intentionally asking for help. In our culture and indigenous cultures, we're asking for help often because Creator is still revealing things to us. And we ask for pity as well because we don't know everything, and we need constantly, and we always take from different places to regain this feeling or a comfort. And so that ask for help is important. And it feels good to say I'm suffering and to say I don't know. And when we go and we cry on the mountain, we go and ask for assistance. That's us saying, Mother, I'm surrendering to you. And I'm asking for you to simply reflect to me what you are, because you are still, you are imbued with life and beauty. And so that is the simpleness that I feel needs to be protected. The westernized mind wants to elaborate and analyze and really try to, and that's also important, but in the old ways, in my studies and my travels of being in different indigenous tribes and being a part of ceremonies, is there's always this beautiful, playful relationship to the nature spirits and the spirits of nature. And so those are the important aspects that in Western culture sometimes we forget. And we forget to offer that tobacco. We forget to ask permission. And it's beautiful to feel sovereign in myself and to understand that that feeling in myself, that mountain has felt forever. And no one and no person can ever change that. We can analyze, we can westernize, we can think, we can even try to get out of the box and come back into our old way. And that's all so lovely and fantastic. So I think I want to protect simplicity and the beauty of nature and the reflections of nature, and I'll pass it to.
Well, I love the fact that Juniper brought up simplicity and sovereignty. And I think the neatest concept, this was all so new to us as well. The first time it was introduced to us as the land owning itself, it was a rather difficult concept to understand. It took us a while to get a clear understanding and understanding what our roles would be as guardians, and understanding that we were here to protect the ecosystems. That in itself was big. That in itself, understanding that she is sovereign, and the protection of the ecosystems. As we all know, this is a new concept, as Jennifer mentioned, a new concept for the United States, as a matter of fact. And it's something to look forward to as far as learning to understand, respect, and love the land itself. Understanding that she belongs to no one, that she is guarded, her ecosystems are guarded, and it's such a new concept. And I think most of all, what's honoring to me is that Crestone is taking that first step And it's just an honor to be here. So we thank you at this point and look forward to working with you with Pyramid Mountain.
Thanks, Angela. Ooh, yeah. My heart's like, wow. The Anaraka people from Colombia, one of the principles that they shared with us was to make the mother a priority and augment her voice in thoughts, words, and actions. And what we understand is that one river is all rivers, one mountain is all mountains. So as we speak and stand for this mountain in her sovereignty, we're truly standing to listen. And one of the things that came to me and the rest of us was to give her a rest, to give her a 9-month gestation period. And a part of her, for me, when I'm in Durango and I'm going to sleep at night and I think about, I don't know if it's a she or a he. The mountain, I feel it and it speaks. And one of the things that I got was that it felt a little burdened, a little heavy, and it needs to rest. So we're visioning that this mountain can rest for 9 months and asking the community to support us in that process. And even as we go into winter and we think about the bears hibernating, that we can all, in some native cultures, that's when you tell the stories, and you don't tell certain stories other seasons, because we're going inside and we're going to be with that mountain, just like we're all connected in every which way. So we're setting a template. And there was a time and a moment when we also stand for the children, and at my age, I got really clear. And I said it twice, and I shocked myself. But I said, I'm willing to die. I don't have a death wish. But I'm willing to die and stand for the children and for nature. Because if we don't have that, we don't have anything. So that's augmenting the voice of the mother. And I really miss Zayla and Crystal here in terms of what they would have to offer, but we're doing our best. And yeah, it's a big responsibility, and it's also a real honor. And getting to know this mountain and visiting her on Monday will be wonderful to see what's developed there and how we can. I'm going to say that this way. When we do spiritual work in Colombia with the native people, it's cleaning and clearing on a specific intention. So we're going to do that in our own way and as a group, and we hope to be one voice.
Thank you all so much. So now I just want to, you can give them a round of applause. Thank you. I'd like to open up the space now to questions from the audience. And I think Kim will be able to take a mic down to anybody that has questions for our panelists.
Too close to the speaker. Okay, Nathan.
All right. My question is there a way that the template can be shared for other folks who'd like to donate their land?
Do you want me to take that, or do you want to take it? I can take it.
Maybe you can.
Well, this is probably best answered by Jennifer, but yes, what Pyramid Mountain is initially is a kind of experiment, and so it can be replicated in other places with other land. I think the legal template to do so is the simplest part. The more complex thing is actually changing human consciousness to view land in a relational way as opposed to viewing it as an object separate from myself. So what we're actually doing with this initial project is we're driving a wedge into a very large cultural construct that humans are separate from nature. And nature is something we can do anything to with no consequence. So the more we do that, the better. There should be many, many places where humans are in such a deep connection to land that they can express the land's intention, and that can be woven into the fabric of the culture. And Crestone is a good place to start that, I think, because there is such wonderful consciousness, great openness here, and we have a tradition, a history of listening from many different spiritual traditions. But why don't you take that, Jennifer?
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, and just to build off what Thomas is sharing, yes, it is possible for others to donate their titles to the land. We are, just as a coalition of organizations, we are looking at how do we do this more at a bioregional level. And part of the intention is because land has been so fragmented, and pretty much everywhere. And so the idea is that it would be one legal entity that would be, that the ecosystems of a bioregion would be representing itself for, and the titles in that bioregion would go into that legal entity. So it would start to aggregate the titles together, which the hope is that the land would become more whole. So that's sort of an initial idea that we still have to really work towards. So we are, I think, because of the work with Pyramid Mountain, there are some other lands that we are engaging in the San Luis Valley to do this with, and so we are pretty committed to the San Luis Valley. And we have lands throughout the country, title holders that are reaching out to us to do this with their lands. But we really want to understand, can this happen at a bioregional level before we start engaging, across different states. And there are different, we have to do feasibility studies in other states just because, it works here in Colorado, and we just have to make sure it works in other states as well. And then we are conducting feasibility studies in the United Kingdom as well as Costa Rica, because we have title holders with substantially large amounts of land that they want to see those lands be sovereign. Are there other questions? Mm-hmm.
We're live feeding, so if you could use the mic, it's great. Other people on the live feed could hear you.
So I had asked this question earlier to another booth over here, and you just touched on the word that I was going to ask about. What are the differences, or maybe like the similarities, to setting up lands as being land sovereign? So like land sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. So what are the differences of land sovereignty, or?
Well, this concept that you're talking about in regards to the land, like being its own ownership and us being stewards of the land. Am I catching that right? So there's another process that I've looked into that basically establishes land as being sovereign in itself. So it sounds similar, but I didn't know if that's like what essentially you're talking about, because you said it was a new concept. So.
Yeah. So this is land being sovereign. I think there are other groups, throughout I would say even globally, that have been really looking into this and trying to do this. This is like I mentioned earlier, the first mountain in the United States where it's actually happened, where the land has its legal sovereignty. But there are other countries like New Zealand who just this last year recognized its a mountain as being sovereign and having personhood. So it is. I think your question is. Hopefully I'm answering your question, but it is pretty much recognizing and having legal sovereignty for the land. I don't know if anyone wants to. Okay.
I'll be quick. I feel like sovereignty is such a powerful concept, and I looked it up because to be it and feel it and know it that we're connected both to the earth and, in alignment, is such a beautiful experience, and maybe some of you can speak to actually feeling sovereign. But I've been working on that. I think it's important because as we're sovereign, then we can understand the sovereignty of the land or of our children or all of it. We get to be independent, and it's really hard to totally describe it because I'm still kind of having that experience. But I think it's a really important point.
I just want to add that sovereignty is also a legal concept. So to make land sovereign might be one thing, but under the law, sovereignty involves certain rights, and who's going to enforce those rights. I think that's the key thing about this particular approach to land sovereignty, is that it identifies guardians, it names guardians, it builds a culture of guardianship around that issue of sovereignty so that the land will be protected. There's humans that can speak for the land. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about this particular model.
Any other questions?
All right, that answers pretty well. I think my main question is that template, like if somebody wants to donate 500 acres right now, can you just take their names and numbers and get that template going and make it happen?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's the
The
main
answer
thing.
is yes.
Okay.
Simple
good.
answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the group here? Okay. Ave?
I think I want to speak for the consciousness of the mountain or the consciousness of nature. And that if we can connect to that, then we can really begin to, as you were asking that question, and people want to give more and more and more land, what is this becoming? What are we really truly creating? And it's a big responsibility, but I think that the power of this and the consciousness of nature speaking in this way is yet to be revealed, and it's exciting at the possibilities.
Okay, any other questions for our group? See any hands?
We still have
Okay.
more time. Okay. We still have more time, but yeah, okay. Oh, here, we have another. Yeah.
For the sake of conversation, I could definitely come up with more things to include and add because I love the concept and I feel very resonant with this idea and where we're moving into out of ownership. It feels very much like a headspace, and I do feel really resonant that we're here of keepers and nurturers of the land. And so I'm actually connected with a group of lawyers that help people do this. And so I'm curious if y'all have resources in the legality space of helping people to establish this in their own land, or is it specifically to what you're working with to have people fall under that legal umbrella, if you will?
Yeah, do you want me to take this? Okay. Yeah, so the law firm that is partnered in this coalition is called the Center for Democratic and Environmental Rights. And so they're the ones that really created the legal framework for this, kind of figured out how to do it. This is something that anyone, has the opportunity to do. It's not something that, it's really, I would say, what's happening with this is it's catalyzing a movement, and ideally that movement grows. And I think the biggest thing for us that we're, really wanting to look for is integrity, so integrity around the legal framework, because even just with the rights of nature movement, there have been some examples where, laws were set up, but they weren't enforceable, and so then they were stripped away. And so it didn't really have teeth, and so I think, the attorneys that we work, and I would maybe speak for Thomas as well, like say that, they're all really committed to seeing this really work and not just go out there and then be washed out, and people not taking it seriously. So that's kind of the main piece that we're looking at. But I'd love to know, who you're working with, and and happy to talk afterwards as well.
Okay.
I'm wondering if anyone here has reservations or resistance, or it's just such a foreign concept that it's uncomfortable, and we'd like to hear from you as well.
Oh, yeah, I have a question. As a First Nations person here, and in working with our ceremonies for many, many years, this is an amazing, totally amazing to all of us what you're doing for the first time is what we've been doing since the beginning of time. And now it's come full circle to this. This is, in terms of a perspective of First Nations person, this is incredible, because through our ceremonies, we always speak with our Mother Earth, and we get to listen to her, what she has to say back, through our spiritual leaders. And now we've come full circle today, and to have this, of what you're doing for the people that are going to donate and that are donating and have donated, we're back in square one again. Now you're on our side. You understand, and what the mountain was saying through us, what we've known through the mountain all the time. And thank you very much for all of your incredible hard work and what you're doing. Thank you. Gracias.
Okay, last call for questions. Anyone? Okay.
Well, and also, I think someone had their hand up in response to Delabina's question. Over here, Kim.
Just say your name and then you can say your question.
Hi, my name's Lucas. My question was in response to if we have any reservations, and it largely stems from, the mountain exists. Sorry, is that better? The mountain exists in a state of sort of perpetuity, and my question is, how will the organization continue on past our generation, and how do you intend to train up new guardians, or how will they come about?
Really appreciate that question. That was one of the first things that we as elders insisted, is that we involve youth. That's where Juniper and Zayla and also Crystal Wolfchild came in. They're the youth, and we'd love for youth to come in and work with us, because we really believe that it has to be passed down to future generations, and it can't be us. And so we're hoping, three of the 5 are youth. They're younger than us, and we hope that we can continue to draw more youth in.
It's in the paperwork. Can you speak to that?
I'm sorry?
It's in the paperwork, isn't it?
It is.
Well, it is. It's in there as an assurance that this will continue in perpetuity to other guardians, and there's agreements that their land is going to be respected, and we don't go backwards in any form.
And lastly, I really appreciate your question, because the question poses a challenge to modern culture. We have to build a different culture, and the land that owns itself is a revolutionary act that is designed to create a cultural shift, especially in the dominant culture, And to do that, people need to step forward. This has to be something that is valued in the community. The guardians would need to be valued. There'd have to be an understanding in communities about what is this? Why are we doing this? So that there's a tradition that's built up of respect for the land, respect for the guardians, respect for the whole idea that land is sovereign. That's so foreign to us. So it's fine to do a legal document and have guardians. That's good. That's good. That's a start. But we're actually after a deeper cultural shift, and that's what we're aiming for here.
I also want to offer that I think Sheldon kind of hinted at that, the way that Native people were with the land before, and it was not even the concept of owning it. It was simply honoring and living with the land and off the land, and like I said earlier, the buffalo, every part of it was used, and there was gratitude for it. So in that sense of the word, we're not reinventing, but we want to honor that way of being that it might be a little bit foreign, but we can get there and begin to really honor the land. And imagine if more and more of this continues, there's going to change the culture, as you were saying, Thomas. It's going to change the way of thinking, it's going to change, and it's going to heal the earth.
Was your question answered? Okay.
Okay, I think.
Okay, maybe one more.
Okay, one more.
Okay. So if you could just say your name and then the question.
Hi, my name is Wade Lockhart, and do you think that this is on? I don't want to put labels. I like what you're doing. Radical environmentalism. I mean, are you kind of in the same? Is that what we're talking about? Earth first. You know what I mean?
It's pretty radical, I guess.
I mean, we don't want to go there.
But yeah.
The FBI is going to show up, right?
No, maybe.
Does anyone want to respond to that, or?
In Crestone, nothing's radical. And in our cultures, and it's just natural, That's how I feel about this conversation, is that it is ancient. It's an ancient relationship to land, and we've been displaced as a human race to a large degree after the colonial act, and all of us being displaced and trying to reclaim and remember our roots and where our people come from and our creation stories and our languages. And it looks radical these days because we've been so tampered with. We've been heavily separated, and so now we're talking about taking our shoes off and going into the mountains to feel more connected. Or, I joke about the New Age community because we're trying to reestablish this connection that our old people and our ancestors, they just lived in that. And so when our elder spoke earlier, he addressed that, and that's important. That's why we need the youth, and we need the elders, and we need all of us here to remember ourselves before the separation. And it is radical because we have been separated, but it's natural because you can't separate a human from its spirit and from its relationship to nature. That's something that they've tried. They tried to wipe out our First Nation people. They tried to wipe out our languages and our songs and everything. So it's very beautiful to have I don't even want to call it a project, but like a revolutionary shift in our mindset, a cultural reclamation of what we are, our true identity. That's been a big part of our conversation lately, is what is it to be truly identified as a human being? We're masked with all these hats and faces, and we could ponder for weeks and years until we die what we are. But there is a true identity, and Hannah Strong, who is a big part of everything in Crestone, wants to also highlight that part of she calls it the original thought. And that's what the Colombian tribes, they actually shared that with Hannah. to remember how original and simple our old thoughts were. And so Hannah's a big person to give thanks to, and Della in here.
I love telepathy and synchronicities because I was just thinking about leaving you. We went with, my daughter and I went with 7 of us on short notice to Colombia, the heart of the mountain, to be with them. I've been on the board for a while and waiting. And so 4 days and 4 nights at the nature school. And the mama, over 100 years old, that we stood under a tree or sat under a tree and we listened, the translation from his language to Spanish to English. And what he said, and I'd heard this before, is he said, know your territory. Learn the songs and the prayers and the dance of your territory. If you know this and you be that, you don't have to come here. And we can all do this, and this is how we'll make the change. Just wanted to leave you with that beautiful message that he gave to us, and we're fortunate that my territory is right here in the San Luis Valley, and it's very much integrated. So I invite each and every one of you to know your territory and live it and be it and celebrate it.
Nice.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Let's give them a round of applause. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you all in the audience for being here with us and being part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And this was a great way for us to move forward with some really important ideas. So thank you for being here.